Alright guys, Ian here, your favorite real estate guy, currently working on my new branding scheme called Ian, America's Most Hated Real Estate Agent. So if there's something Southeast Michigan or worldwide that I could help you out with pertaining to real estate, give me a call. If I don't know off the top of my head, I'm sure I know somebody who does. So the point of today's video is kind of a dry run for a live I'm going to do on Facebook here, covering some of the machinations of these pinko scum that push this BLM. BLM is in Black Lives Matter, that push this BLM bullshit. So what I've got here is a friendly little list of certain, I guess, supposedly racist statements that evil white people make, not realizing they're being racist, and there's an explanation beneath that as to why we're being racist or something. So I'm going to read the first statement, read the pinko trash interpretation of that, and then rip it apart myself, because it's pretty easy if you're not a total fucking moron. So the first thing, we begin. You think something I said was racist? You must have misunderstood me. To which the pinko replies, when individuals perpetuate racism, it is usually unintentional. You may have had good intentions. Still, racist acts are defined by their impact, not their intent. Give black people the benefit of the doubt when we call out racism. Rather than suggesting we lack understanding or intelligence, listen and learn from us about how to confront racist ideology. So, because you're black, you're going to have a better understanding of racist ideologies. Isn't that kind of racist? So because of the color of your skin or your ethnicity, you're now entitled to a more important line of thinking or allegedly an inherently valid point of view, more so than somebody who's white. You know, I see a lot of this bullshit, and it's like, well, I'm black, therefore you should listen to me because my life is different. Okay, so what? Does every white person grow up with the exact same life? My God, how closed-minded and stupid can you be? You know, and then when it comes to perpetuating racism unintentionally, that sounds like something the Catholic Church calls original sin, kind of along the same line as thought crimes and thinking that's real. It's a hallmark of leftist and communist movements to sort of couch you as a criminal before you've been able to actually commit a crime just by your very thoughts. It's absolutely insane. So it's interesting that, you know, you can perpetuate racism without being racist, despite the fact that their definition of racism routinely falls on its face. And it's interesting to me, something I've noticed with the left is they like to contort and pervert definitions a lot. It makes it really hard to have a discussion about anything. So on the one hand, even though whites, because we have institutional power, are thereby inherently racist, somebody who's black and doesn't have institutional power is in a position to talk about that, right? So you kind of see how this all, it just doesn't make sense. So on to the next one. I don't see color. We are all one human race. Okay? To which the pinko replies, while we are all human and biologically the same, the systems of oppression, the systemic oppression of black people makes my experience vastly different from yours. To say that you don't see my race means you don't see my oppression, my marginalization, or the discrimination I'm facing daily. This diminishes my suffering and excuses you from your responsibility to be anti-racist. You must see race to combat race. Okay, first of all, I have no responsibility whatsoever, nor does anybody else, regardless of their skin color, to act in a way that you just so happen to find preferable. That's ridiculous. And just so we're clear, anti-racist really means anti-white. So what they want a white person to do is knowingly and actively subvert their best interest to benefit a colored person simply by virtue of that person being colored. It's pretty ridiculous. And we, even though we're all human, we are not all biologically the same. That's patently false. I mean, you can take members of the same ethnicity that are going to respond differently to different medications. We're genetically different. Again, even amongst members of the same race, the same gender. I mean, there is just, to say that all humans are the same is ridiculous. That's not how taxonomical classifications work in biology. So maybe you want to brush up on that and be wary, because when you try to use logic on the one hand in a normal sense and then turn around and pervert it with this leftist doublespeak bullshit, it makes it really easy to kind of decode that, you know? And again, experiences being vastly different from yours. Okay, dude, everybody has a different life. Somebody who grows up in Appalachia who's white is going to have a very different person or experience than somebody who grows up in an affluent white neighborhood. You could have two white children grow up in the same affluent neighborhood, and because one dad's home more than the other one, they're going to have vastly different experiences. Everybody has a vastly different experience. So I don't know where they're coming off with this, you know, you don't see my race means you don't see my oppression. It's like, okay, dude, do you want race to exist? Do you not want race to exist? Like, what do you want here? It's starting to become pretty obvious that as long as whatever you're saying confers benefit to you and that minority group, it's fine, and that you really just kind of grift off of the fact that white people, in a unique way amongst all the other ethnicities, have this giant guilt button you can press to get free shit. So on to the next one. I'm not a racist person, okay? To which the Pinko responds, this good non-racist people versus bad racist people binary concept is a gross oversimplification of what racism is. Racism is oftentimes subconscious, undetected, and born out of privilege or apathy. Racism isn't just in bad people's minds. Racism affects all people who belong to a racialized society. Put more effort into learning how to be anti-racist than you put into convincing others that you're not racist. So it's funny that, you know, in the first fucking sentence, they start off complaining about gross oversimplifications when, I mean, at least these two responses were themselves riddled with gross oversimplifications. And again, we cross into the territory of thought crimes, with racism often being subconscious or undetected. So you're committing crime without knowing you're committing a crime. It's just, it starts to, you know, the Catholic Church figured out even, I think, centuries ago that this type of stuff just doesn't work on people. So maybe, you know, with your new and budding religion of Black Lives Matter, you could take a couple cues from institutions that have existed for thousands of years and kind of trial and error the different things that, you know, the different kind of bullshit you're trying to pull off on people. Again, I'm not going to put any effort into being anti-racist. There's no point, because as we're going to see later, that regardless of how much effort I put into being racist, simply by virtue of appearing to be white, I am a racist, right? So see how they flip around and pervert. So now you can't not be racist if you're white and you live in America because you're racist in power, but you're somehow supposed to put effort into not being racist anymore, despite that being a fundamental tenet of who you are. I guess racism is in everybody's minds, again, with the thought crimes. It's just, you know, I mean, I don't think I have to explain that anymore. Next one. I'm not responsible for what my ancestors did. Am I supposed to feel bad about that? To which the Pinko replies, we are living in a society that was built on the backs of black people for the benefit of white people. Generational wealth, prosperity, and opportunity benefit white people. Recognize that injustice doesn't stop with our ancestors. White people are benefiting from the very systems that marginalize black people. Feel convicted to reconcile today's injustices. Yeah, I'm not going to feel convicted to rectify shit, because as it stands now, this is the greatest country on the fucking planet. That aside, this society was not built on the backs of black people. That's ridiculous. The slaves that were owned in the antebellum South were owned by a minority of the population, okay? One of the reasons that the North won the Civil War was because they had an edge over the South with respect to their level of industrialization, and then the railroads, it allowed them to move things more efficiently, produce more goods. So there's not, I mean, built on the backs of slaves. It's like, come on, man, really? And then it's not like, God, I don't even know, you know, and then it's like, I don't see a mad dash from every black person in America. I don't see a mad dash back to Africa coming out of them. So aren't they also benefiting from the broken backs of their black ancestors? And then this shit about, oh, you know, this, that, and the other black people. It's like, you realize that there couldn't have been black slaves in the United States without black people in Africa selling other black people to white slave traders. Like, did you guys know that? You know, and to that effect, it's like, well, you know, I see all this anti-white yada yada bullshit sentiment coming from minorities, allegedly. I think a minority of the minorities in America, but, you know, where's all the vitriol for the Middle Eastern slave trade? Okay, do you guys know why there's not an abundance of black people in the Middle East? Because when they had male slaves, they castrated them so that there wouldn't be a population continuing on into the future. Okay, so, and again, let's not forget that allegedly half the country over 100 years ago fought to end slavery. So where's the credit for all those dead white people that were dying to free slaves, right? So it doesn't matter, right? Because that doesn't fit into your fucking agenda, does it? So, yeah, you should, you know, nobody, I don't care what your ethnicity is, you shouldn't feel bad for anything that you didn't do. It doesn't matter if through some haughty, you know, mental gymnastics way of thinking that you're benefiting suspiciously along with all the other minorities in this country from enslavement, to the degree that that's even relevant given the amount of economic output driven by slaves. But yeah, don't be falling for that shit. So on to the next one. As a white person, I'm discriminated against because of reverse racism, to which the Pinko responds, racism requires both power and prejudice. You may face prejudice. That's not racism, because your race is in power. The criminal justice system favors white people. Social institutions favor white people, and white culture and internalized prejudice attributes favorable traits to white people. White people are irrefutably in a place of power, so reverse racism cannot exist. So see, that's what I was talking about earlier. So simply by being white, in the majority white country, you can't not be racist because your race is in power. So why are you even asking these people to work on it? It makes no fucking sense. I also completely disagree with this definition of racism. It fits suspiciously well into leftist bullshit arguments for why white people should feel bad and lick boots and kneel down in public and kiss black rings or something, which I think is just disgusting in the utmost. But it's like, wow, dude, the criminal justice system favors white people. Okay, do you ever think maybe white people also happen to commit less crimes and that could perhaps explain the disparity? And then let's say on the one hand, yeah, sure, the criminal justice system does favor white people. Okay, let's look at white men and white women. Do you think there's going to be a bigger difference in sentencing between white men and white women, or white men and black men? Or is it the same? So now are we as white men supposed to gang up on white women because they're favored in the criminal justice system too? Like, okay, and then let's not even think about the nitty-gritty shit. Like, dude, just so you guys know, if you're ever arrested or you're ever being interviewed by the police, shut your fucking mouth. Okay, don't sit there and go on about a million things. Just shut up and sit there and wait until you have time to talk to a lawyer. If you can't afford one, apparently one's provided to you. I don't know how well that goes over in the inner cities, but a lot of the stuff that you deal with police can be taken care of with preventative action. So, and then as far as social institutions favor white people, well, let me ask you this, dude. If I was in South Africa as a white man in a majority black country, do you think that that country might have black culture at its center? Do you think the institutions might favor black people? So see, they're taking this facet of majority privilege and transposing that now onto racial privilege. But when you go and extract what they're talking about, it applies much more to an ethnic majority than it does some internalized bullshit racism. Like go to Japan as a white person, or go to Korea as a white person, and see how you're treated in those cultures when it comes down to whether or not you get preferential treatment or this, that, or the other. It's called in-group ethnic preference. It's a valid evolutionary trait that makes sense under conditions of Darwinian selection. So I know that that's a little bit more complicated than give me free shit because I'm black, but I challenge you to look into that a little bit. Next one, why do you make everything about race? To which the pinko replies, everything in our society is blanketed with white supremacy, which is the notion that whiteness is the norm, the standard, or the ideal. Blackness is regarded as abnormal, substandard, and not ideal. White supremacy covers every facet of our society, but it often goes unnoticed by those it benefits. To better recognize your privilege, take notice of oppression that you don't experience. To better recognize paranormal activity, take notice of paranormal activity you don't experience. See, that sentence is retarded. Everything in our society is blanketed with white supremacy. Now, here's another thing leftists are great at, and that's projection. So I think what they mean to say there is everything in my mind is blanketed with white supremacy and idealization of racism. So if you're in a majority white country, like if you're in a Japanese country or a Korean country or South Africa or anywhere in Africa, then blackness, Asianness, whiteness in any of those environments, because that particular ethnicity is the majority in that country, is going to be the norm or the standard. That's just how it works. As far as the ideal, I guess that's debatable, but you can look at Western culture and see what has happened after all this diversity and immigration bullshit. It seems like a whole lot of strife. Now, I don't know how much of that is inborn and necessarily part and parcel to having a diverse society, and how much of it is just due to race baiting from our fucking shit media, but you know, I guess we'll find out. And on to the last one. All lives matter. Whew. To which the pinko responds, all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter. All Lives Matter overlooks systemic injustice plaguing the black community. All Lives Matter has been weaponized to silence the cries of the unheard. All Lives Matter promptly ends progress before it starts. To work toward equity for all people, we must start with advocacy for the most marginalized. See, that's the thing. We already have equality under the law in this country. There are so many laws in the books to prevent discrimination that it's starting to backfire against minorities that want certain areas maybe to themselves. Like why, I don't understand why is it illegal for a black homeowners association to get together and say, hey, you know, Main Street in this town, we're only going to have black homeowners. We're only going to have black business owners. I don't see a problem with that. But for some reason, it's an issue when white people do it. I don't know. So And then the fact of the matter is, yes, all lives matter. That is a true statement. All lives matter and can't matter until Black Lives Matter doesn't make sense. So you're saying that until I acknowledge that Black Lives matter outside of the amount that they already matter by being alive to begin with, that those other lives don't matter? So everybody else is supposed to be worthless because I and others don't acknowledge the specialness of Black lives? That doesn't make any fucking sense. All Lives Matter has been weaponized to silence the cries of the unheard. It hasn't been weaponized at all. It's just a quick quip that people use to point out the stupidity that's necessarily a part of a statement like Black Lives Matter. All Lives Matter promptly ends progress before it starts. Again, there's not a lot of progress to be made in America anymore, okay? There's already equality under the law. Social, economic disparities between different ethnicities have plenty more explanations than just whitey bad, whitey evil, whitey racist, bad white man, okay? There's not really a need to work to equity for all because all of us have the same goddamn opportunities, okay? In fact, with the environment now, you might even have an edge if you're Black or Latino, especially if you're going into a boomer company or a company ran by a bunch of white people that are 50, 60 years old because they're so fucking terrified somebody's gonna compromise their shekels that they're gonna do whatever you want. You know, they're gonna pick you despite the fact that you may not be as qualified as a white or Asian candidate. So you really wanna, I would suggest going out there and actually trying to build a business or try to get a job or get a career going before you bitch about being poor and how that's due exclusively to fucking white racism. Because I tell you what, there are way too many white people that are chomping at the bit to kneel down before a black man in public or kiss a black man's ring or kiss their shoes to the point where it's disgusting. And I think that if you're white and you do that, you have a serious problem, less of a problem than the black man or woman who's asking you to do that. So again, my name's Ian, working on becoming the most hated real estate agent in the entire country. So if you like this, let me know. If you have questions, let me know. And then if you're somebody who's kind of into politics but not really, and you have some retarded friends or family members or what have you, and you're struggling to come up with reasons as to why they're full of shit, just hit me up. I'd be more than happy to help.